la kala ma de tu gu ba de nge wares ra nge wa tes ra wa da jen la te gu ba ni de nge so ra wa da jen la te gu ba ni nge wa re la ra ta di ola za di ko la shan da ta da za shi le kar song da na kan shir ten ju ma yin be chunga ye ba ma yin no te shi tong ba ma yin be chunga ye ba ma yin no so ra til nda ki ji shi na
So now herein we now will try to sum up our discussions by relating it to dependent arising. So herein it is important to understand that what intrinsically exists, what has inherent essence, what exists independently is mutually exclusive from what arises from causes and conditions. This is important to understand. Should we repeat this? So what is intrinsically existent, what is essentially existent, what exists by way of its own nature is mutually exclusive from that which arises from causes and conditions, bases, and so forth. So herein Nāgārjuna sums up it in this manner. There is nothing which is not a dependent arising. Everything is empty, exactly because of that.
Tina ane phabal hai shijepa na kharasundana ra tazun sama rawdo ta ko lungru chukunda ra khaan la tene chunyo paas tene rawa minjuro khaan la tene chikchila tene chunwa insa ane tene rawa minjuro ko rawa yo mara chen la tenwa re ra teko rawa meba tes ta chu sama ane rawa mba chen la tenwa ina tena dani yo ma ins tendeki ane pe rawa gutu dadu yo ma res la da.
Then similarly, if you want to know the exact page, it's on page number 15. So 15, 1-5. Now I will repeat 15, 1-5. So I repeat, that which is produced from causes is not inherently produced. It does not have an inherent nature of production. That which depends on causes is taught to be empty. Whosoever knows emptiness is conscientious. Then moving on, for that reason, that which is not dependently arisen, such phenomena do not exist. For that reason, that which is not empty, such phenomena do not exist. There is no phenomena which is not empty of inherent existence. Then moving on, similarly, Aryadeva says in his 400 verses, whatever exists dependently is not independent. Yes? Everything lacks independence, consequently, there is no self that exists. Exists independently, exists inherently. We have to add that qualifier.
Tishiris. Da di olan deba di la kola da ngo ni chi is metona kisi ngo ni tomba mena la ra metona shujen ha tso ba chen la de de is ponju chi ba tene myons la da tsi kisi ngo ni chi is tong ngo ni ji kasa ngo ni ji metona la de ngo ni ji tuba kina ura ngo ni ji kisi tuba ina shujen ha tso ba chen la de de is ponju chi ba la de ten we ya ma res la.
So now we move further. Contradictions were inherent existence to be accepted. Now the first one, if phenomena were not empty of an underlying basis or of their self-existence, it would be entirely impossible for the multiplicities of phenomena to be transformed independence on causes. There will be no observable change if things are inherently existent. Change in itself is an expression or manifestation of causes and conditions.
Ti odlan la tena chö thamji is ngo ni am sa jitsane emba yis like sama malida par you door da chatan.
So with that kind of reflection, we need to now understand that all phenomena then are empty of inherent existence. All phenomena are then empty of intrinsic nature.
Tadila ola dila da tena taden tse meni bi jinze ta taden tse meni bi jinze kharesana taden tse meni bi jinzen chi mebaran donasra donanes ngosun tang gewe es jiten yongda tang sen gewa gelas kesi taden tse ne mani na yo mari lawaina jiten yongda keche den gero tani yo la den gero ra 아니 회주지 is dubi is chen de da yoba dance pen de du ta chu ba je ba rang gi is toy chu ba yin is 세상 하나 저거 지기 아래라와 간줄라 소바다 메다 가리는 봐. 다 참아 아주 통대 무슨 통대 펜다 뇌다 데다 두도 참아 아주 통야 예데 바실라야 나 저거 예바데 랑기 뇨에 두고도 왔어. 들 아니 멜라나야 베도 코는 게라.
Now this is particularly important to understand what we are about to discuss. That when we say that the referent object of the imputed phenomena is not findable, then if we begin to say that since the referent object of the imputed phenomena is not findable, then we begin to say that it is utterly non-existent, then this contradicts worldly convention. This contradicts our own experience. Because our own experience, our own perceptions establish that there is such a thing called suffering, happiness, functionality of things.
Tiodlani sharipula karsanta jinan do lungloji sharipusra the tate se pena da chi chawara da la ni la da chi chawa sende de ke de jimuji da shi la wora mato jim de good jimuji is da mis metos chisan da la nga zu chi pheshi tu sa di demba tu ba yo mare la ta sama demba tu ba la jawar da ra.
So when we say then moving on we cite a passage from the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, wherein the Shariputra la the lange the dinjira Sanjay in Papa Cherisina. Now I think it is 16, but not entirely sure.
Sharip Korang Sunjurimdo.
Mare.
Right, that's Sanjay Masuna Sharipul and Animasun.
So now just to kind of get the gist of this, it is important to understand from the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, wherein Shariputra is advised and addressed in this manner. So Shariputra, what we call the self does not exist intrinsically. We have to leave it at that. We call it a self as a term.
ndo tenju tumar da ndo la ne saje gi sun sha ba tenju la na da shi zi ja ga ke ba da phe ke ba du zom cha ji la tenju la ndo tenju ra ndo tenju tumar la da mambu na lo ya kar sun na chö tham ji is min zang de sun xin chö tham ji min zang da zang la ju ra da zang mo pa ta de ne yo ma re es la ora de na sa ta de na yu tin ne sa ten ne se me be chö tham ji yu ji ngo ne is 마두바 유진 타니지 왕기 제상아도 타니의 샤위나 타니지 왕기 여바 잡아 점 인비스 다인라라다.
Now coming back to the previous actual quote, page is actually on page number 1818 at the if you look at the last two lines of the first paragraph, Shariputra, it is thus self, for example, is called self, but this vocal expression self is not apprehended. Yes? Then moving on, in many sutras and treatises, it is taught that all phenomena are only names, only imputations. When imputed objects are sought, now this is not complete. When imputed objects are sought, the referent object of the imputed objects or imputed phenomena are not found. This is a sign that all phenomena do not exist, are only established as existing through the force of conceptually designated verbal conventions. Existing in this way functions as existing. So the only manner in which we can begin to posit the existence of things is through conceptually designated verbal conventions. So terms.
다들 오 모델이 있습니다. 텐진 대원 중앙 칸스 텐네 동바니듯이 텐진 대원인서 동바레스 텐네 중앙 그래서 텐네스 텐네 다바데 텐네 다바인브라 초단지바 텐네 다바들라고 텐네 다바테스 텐이 우밀람레스.
Now we get the heart of it on page number 22. When the question is asked, what is the accomplishment or benefit of that, the harmony of emptiness and dependent arising? So from Nāgārjuna's fundamental wisdom of the middle way, whatever is a dependent arising is explained to be emptiness. Yes, whatever is a dependent arising is empty of any inherent existence. This, and then being dependent on labeling and emptiness is being dependent on labeling and emptiness is the middle way. Whatever is a dependent arising is explained to be emptiness. Yes, being dependent upon labeling and emptiness is the middle path, is the middle way path.
Sending Trimana cities, Haratene, Mijawara, Sonway, Nekabjis, Sanjis, Chinite, Taba Imbe, Taba Turun dance.
So now the Anjoganachi Sunanda.
Tetanas, sending Trima Namsra, cities, Tene, Mijawara, Sonway, Tatene Jamie Chavandula. Ani nekab ji sra sanji chuni tela tes taba yimbe taba thorung dans ter masi nyomo be se trima seru yimba jende se ti pacha jang seru yimbe nyomo pacha dans jebi trima tamji sebi se sanji chuni ta dendejla sanji chuni la ra.
Now coming back, relating this to our discussions about the Dharmadhatu, then since all the obscurations, all the contaminations of the mind which exist in the mind can be overcome from their root, then at that very moment when all afflictions and obscurations are overcome, that is the true nature of the mind. And that actualization of the true nature of the mind then is liberation. And then similarly, we have to understand this broadly, or more broadly, as the total extinction of not only the afflictions but the seeds of afflictions.
Toronto Sangebe Ni two pays Chir Tarba dance, Tanji Chamber Yuba Dulas, Tadi Ani Tabada Tanji Chamber Yuba du Resra.
So on the basis of this understanding, then we also begin to posit the possibility of enlightenment, that there is through the total extinction of afflictions, on the basis of overcoming the seeds of afflictions, then there is liberation. On the basis of liberation, then we begin to posit the possibility of enlightenment too.
That all the person got on the long match in Dora. Team and the heat dead Lilindon, Yam and Losson Dra. Teta Bus, Penetrashing Sublas, Tenchi, Tomba Nichis, Tawate. Ngenjungi Sambekone Handes, Chimba dance, Rejungi Tsumda, Tang the Soda Tsumla, Tsum Chiriba, Jizun Ways, Goni, Tsolam cheese, Nakeup, Thosamling cheese, Yang Comber, Chebe, Rim cheese, Tawa de Tony Tenji Tsuji, Tobers, Chewies, Shila Sundeji, Comber. Chute Jolom, or that the Tona the Jolom Lashura, Tigers Lemoda. Tanda Tigers, Tambudun good disarray. Tambudin the leaders. Ah,
Geshema Shodan Kazir,
need the showdown of Chungago.
Chundum Kazedo,
The Mayola Savajda, Sanje teacher Gende Nilaja, 2 other. Tsikanyin chemajito. Taban deba namji chap laji. Shulo tsikanyin chemaji lebun dawa tabe sumshi maji.
Lele, di dunjuwa dira.
Sanje tujue genden ne lajan.
So now, page number 25, if you look at it, there is a quote from the 70 stanzas on the three refuges. The Buddha, his teachings, and the Sangha are the protecting refuges of all those aspiring for liberation. After that, thus, certainty will easily arise that the three jewels are the sole source of refuge for those aspiring for liberation. Those who are sick and tired of suffering will go to the three jewels. Oh, that's not a dimardo again. Geshema.
So in your own did the taba the chip the shida. Nala Sanje tujue genden desa. Taban deba namji chap. Then dawa tabe sumshi.
Digi tama dire, wama dire so.
Then all malder. Nima test mando. Then teta buse trashing sabla ra. Ten chimbu tomba ni tawa tes and yenjungi sambe gone hantes. Chimba da rejung laida. Chimba da rejung trum. Trum chiriba, she juzun you gones. Salam.
So now we talked about the 5 parts yesterday. So if we look at the same page, page number 25, with the heading Progressing Along the Paths and Grounds of Sutra and Tantra. So the part common to the Theravadan. So the first point. Similarly, whilst on the path of accumulation with the motivation of definite emergence. So this motivation of definite emergence refers to renunciation. True renunciation, with the motivation of true renunciation on a foundation of any of the forms of ethics. Forms of ethics herein refers to the vows that one can take, ethical vows, whether you are spiritually ordained or not. So I read again. Similarly, whilst on the path of accumulation with the motivation of definite emergence, with true renunciation on a foundation of any of the ethical vows for either the ordained or the non-ordained, we familiarize ourselves through repeated study and reflection on the subtle and deep view of emptiness, which is of such great value. Now, one thing is missing here in this translation, which talks about the fact that even at the path of accumulation, the correct view of emptiness is still understood through the medium of a conceptual image at this point. One is still unable to directly perceive emptiness, even at the path of accumulation. 튠징은에 또 고래라는 티도 디나라 디디날 치민다 디콘솔 세고지
시시는 시에라 다디가 총람 때는 딘디사디 신딘도 차라
총람 조차스
총람제다 근데 총람지 이제 네거스 퇴비 자 퇴섬다 총나거든 퇴섬지 제라 디 양양 공부를 때네 템버치 그래서 양양 공부를 제베에서 림지스 따와 되니 돈이 된지 주죠. 근데 올래다. 돈이 된지 주지 또베에서 실라 순대지스 곰도 줄때에서 아니 드리갈 아니 실라 순대도 아니 가르 곰버 채운도갈 아니 전함 타고 그래스. 라 대내에서 림지에서 돈이 무슨도 받아 돈을 가져가서 돈을 가서나 돈이 무슨도 돈을 올라라죠. 아니 무슨도 돈왜 돈람지에서 최고조 람데 타버스 되다.
So now, if we are to understand the 5 parts very carefully, then this is a very, very good, concise explanation. So now moving on, we talked about the path of accumulation. So how at the path of accumulation, there we must have true renunciation, and on the basis of true renunciation, we must also cultivate ethical conduct, whether we take the vows or not. And then through repeated study and reflection, we begin to get at the subtle and deep view of emptiness, okay? But at the path of accumulation, we must have true renunciation, cultivate true renunciation, and on the basis of that, have the foundation of ethical conduct. And on the basis of this, we begin to study, reflect on emptiness, okay? Now moving on, the next part is, after the path of accumulation, the next part is the path of preparation. So, as our way of emptiness develops successfully, the path of preparation is attained when emptiness is realized by means of a meaning generality on the basis of the union of calm abiding and meditative insight. So, calm abiding herein refers to concentration, shamatha, and in meditative insight herein refers to vipassana. So, by establishing the union of shamatha and vipassana, we get at the correct view of emptiness. But even at this still point, we have to think about emptiness conceptually. We haven't realized emptiness directly, perceived emptiness directly. Understood? Now, moving on. When exactly is emptiness directly perceived? After establishing the union of calm abiding and meditative insight, after further progression, emptiness is seen directly and the path of seeing, the Dharma jewel, and a true path is attained at that moment.
denpa thong sinvi gongbe ta denpa thong azo to nyung su do thong ni ra ani gongbe is gonglam chi is henje ta gonglam henje ro chi is ra henje chi is nyomo chewa na ta de gonglam ko spa nzun na peti so yo ra pa ja chiri da nyembo chore mangbo la jo re ta ti ko jila ka ani ne la da henje chi is nyomo runji sa sabyon ta cheba ten de pambe is go den nam se rungji tabde se tara nyomo chungu da nyomo chungu ra nyomo chungu sabyan dang se jeba pabe se tarba thona rana ji se tu zoba che de milo lang te blasta membe milo lang te jira.
So now at the path of seeing, one is able to actually perceive, directly perceive emptiness. Then, now moving forward, this then is the direct antidote to true origins. True origins herein referring to the origin of our suffering. Yes? 25. There are some bullet points, right? So the first, second, third are the path of accumulation, preparation, and seeing. Now, fourth bullet point. This then is the direct antidote to true origins. This direct perception of emptiness is then the direct antidote to the origin of our suffering, such as the acquired afflictive mind of true grasping. Yes, true grasping at innate conception of the self, or more generally, innate conception of true existence. Yes, inherent existence, and also begins the attainment of true cessations, because we talked about how true path must necessarily lead to true cessation of our sufferings. The complete abandonment of true sufferings, such as rebirth in the lower realms. Yes? Now, moving on. Having seen the truth of emptiness, through familiarity with the path of meditation, the causer innate afflictive minds, together with their seeds, are abandoned entirely through the attainment of a series of true cessations. So now this discussion will turn into a very, very extensive discussion if we kind of have to dive into it. But we need to understand that true cessation is not a monolithic thing. For each particular affliction, there is a true cessation. For each particular instance of affliction, there is a true cessation. Okay? So then having seen the truth through familiarity with the path of meditation, the causer, the grosser, the manifest form of innate afflictive minds, together with their seeds, are abandoned entirely through the attainment of a series of true cessations. Then finally, with the abandon of the subtlest level, the small of the afflicted minds, together with their seeds, liberation is attained. Now, with the completion of one's own journey, the ground of no more training, no more learning of a Theravada Arhat is actualized. So this is the kind of manner in which we talk about liberation from the Theravada perspective with regards to the 5 paths.
radio la danne shi da dang da de mus na wo le shodan tu chi reshin no dura ta pe na ni ting de so so ting dora ngai ting che de sa tong bi ko chen bu chung na ta so so ting ta ji chen ko tong ba ni ko chen bu chung na sa nga khang la ten ni sa ta bi phum bo ta nga ta sa ki shi phum bo lo ra phum bo le mi de che go so so che ba chen dang de tong bo so so ki phum bo de le ten che go 대양 대라양스 아니 주풍 소소그 주풍 있나래 제발 낭세지 풍보 라 아주 주풍 저분도 싶은 나바시 풍보라라 근데 낭세지 풍보라 아 풍보라 제발 레발 제반데 네체 개첨보레스라 라
So now moving on, another important point on page number 27, the wait a sec, 1, 2, 3, 4, the fifth bullet point. Yes, when analyzing the I, right? When analyzing the self, and a little understanding of it being empty arises. Now, when you begin to appreciate to some extent that this I or the self is empty of inherent existence, you should then analyze the mental and physical aggregates independence upon which the I is imputed, right? So herein, mental and physical aggregates refers to the psychophysical factors which make up who we are, which make up our experience of this I. So when you begin to appreciate to extent that this self or the I is empty of inherent existence, then at that point it is important to now analyze the mental and physical aggregates, which are the basis upon which this I is being imputed. Yes? Now, whilst in general it is important to analyze the aggregates of material forms, feelings, discrimination, and compositional factors, it is of particular importance to analyze carefully the aggregates of primary conscious, the mental consciousness itself. Yes.
Chiri sanji kanzo pi isi nelu chang ngoto go batang sra kanzo pi shung ngoto go batang ani sanji isi kanzo pi ngo serik tsam ngote ne sra ta sanji ngo di chidang seri imbara ngote ne isi di rang shen la si chebe ta rimji sanji tendang pi isi ngoto ne isi ani sachi jendang si mundrawe isi 첨부요. 근데 이게 또 ngoje당 진사라. 동보 가서 ngo세리를 쳐 아니 ngo네고 된다베 두 유미를 깔리 파트네 바 제버친 로레스. 근데 이나 아니 베 칼 코치보다 다 야보지 레로스라.
그디 ngo네 야보드다. 야보드리.
더
So for those of us who really want to cultivate our meditative practices on emptiness, I think this is very, very helpful actually. So further now, it is in general difficult to identify even the conventional way the mind abides. This is especially true. When we say that the mind is clear and knowing, it is very, very difficult to exactly explain the manner in which the mind is clear and knowing, unless and until we appreciate it experientially. So this is exactly why it says, further, it is in general difficult to identify even the conventional way the mind abides. Once the conventional nature of the mind, which is clear and knowing. So here it says the mere clear knower, merely clear and merely knowing, has been identified. First, we need to appreciate that quality, conventional quality of the mind, in its nature being clear, being merely clear, in its function being knowing. And on the basis of that, then, once that has been identified, then through analyzing its nature, now we are getting at the ultimate reality of the mind. Then through analyzing its nature, finally you will gradually be able to identify the ultimate entity of the mind, the ultimate nature of the mind. If that is done, there is tremendous progress unlike anything else.
lo shepa tsam memparara chige kasana teta tayo kola ani shelo tsam la nga chi sheso ko so thyo so la tende tsam memparara la urta 참 멤버 아니 가르골라나 소소게 냠뇽로라 냠뇽 주토라 겠다 소소게 상단에 소소게 지 용원데 저거면서 아 나디 뜰 취슈 나디 신소 나디 고소 나디 로와 삼징만디 para 소소게 상단에 란토라 지 칼로 용원데 지 아텐 다워레스무드라 주토도서 게 켄시 이나 아니 소선 던데 단기나 콘드시베다 가정 갈래도다 마부지 콘투사 콘드시바 나지 이세 지체데스 소무 소무 템비다 소무다데 동바지 템빌라라 도 땡주 도는 사지에서 땡주라나 아니 지자가 개바다 표개바다 송샤지 대다기 있어 본데 아니 드주고 완전 공부해야 돼 아니 이제 표개바다 냐뉴지 마부지요라 가시한 사모탄에 배 용화 퇴되니 되게 강사라 냐뉴젠츠 셀레버 셰바 남라사 나라니 간주다 수수기 가지주 두고이너라 라리 뉴바 땅세 땡데 수수기다 가시 리바야 보여라 가시 시라요 말은 이내 수순 전체 받아 채워서라 땡비스 터삼당 센데와 랑기 냠뇨 제츠 당스 체당 체데라 체데 냐뇨 젠지 세 케베 당바 손도 센데위 고네 아니 러고 아니 소소게 지단 개발 냐뉴전에 땡거 받아 소소거라니 간주 찍고 봐다 된대게 아니 손든데고네 아니 러좀 찍고스라 태상은 주고.
Now, the last instruction is particularly important on page number 28, and we talked about this before. If you do not wish your knowledge of the view of emptiness to be merely intellectual, but rather wish to experience it yourself in your own continuum, you should build a foundation for this through what has been explained here. Yes, in accordance with your own mental ability, capacity, you should study and contemplate the sutras and treatises which teach the profound view of emptiness, as well as the excellent explanations of them by the experienced Tibetan scholars in their commentaries. As you are doing so, you should train, making your own way of cultivating experiences of emptiness to accord with the authentic advice of an experienced and wise scholar. So it is important that when within our own meditative experiences, if we come to believe that we are now getting sort of closer to a truer realization of emptiness, truer appreciation of emptiness, it is important not immediately hold that experience to be authentic, but to rely on the explanations, the experiences shared by these experienced and wise scholars in their works.
Tadi wala kundi tadi chida nga zui jing hua lai jo so so tsam tsadi gala ni de le hua de le ka sana de la da de le be bala ora de be le chu gewe so le de ta tanda nga zo ka so ba pang tangaram sala pesana de ora ni ma chu nga chu ji ha chi nga zo ka le jen ra so so na ni de sa to ya po shira me ba ine a kamba do na hi ne ki pa alo je sa alo je ta nga zo nye ra ra ya thioti ma she ta nga zo ji hota bu da che ra de ga nga zo de la mi ne de ora 다 단다 디나 갈송잖아 들 베레 중이 게초 찍다 들 가서 베초체시 주기 계획 손나고 쏘다 이시기 쏘다 가서 계획 초지 쌓여라스라 디 가르스는 덴드 소소게 대화 텐드더라 덴드 랑신 심쟁고 데 대화 돼야 돼 라니 집어 많이 봐 랑신 삼마라 랑다 신 심쟁 건지 있어 아니 타데 데니 레데 타데 오메 라레스라 타데 데니 통위 미스다 근데 타데 오메게 람게 다 미딜 때네 아니 톱데 샹체 드버쇼레데 근데 타나다 오메게 람도 아니라 가서 타데 오메게 람도 아니고 또데 예스라 근데 아니 가서나 다 샹주 쳔불린데 조쇼레데 나다 토데 샹체 린데 린드 쇼라나 다 샹주 쳔불라데 타바 타지 쳔베 고방에 살레 드버쇼레 근데슬리다
Then, since we already looked at many of these essential points from the commentary, it is, I think, also good to appreciate the dedication composed by His Holiness at the last. Through the collection of virtue arising from my endeavors here, my efforts here, may all sentient beings longing for happiness, myself and others, attain the eye which sees reality, free from extremes, traveling to and reaching the land of great enlightenment. So we can relate it to our own experience here. Over the many days, whether the seat was comfortable, whether our feet begin to numb a little bit after sitting through the sessions, whether we were able to follow along with the discussions, with the effort that we extended to the discussion here over the course. It is important to dedicate that merit, not just for ourselves, but for all sentient beings to be able to see reality as it is, and that they are able to attain enlightenment eventually.
Tanda digi kundu gudi tsamji de churan samala miduda, tela disunda, chebandene dwa, tsinde dwa, chebandene zamni sharnu la de ta, nushobala de kanzo maje shijewa da tena kora, shalare eshiya da ra, sharnu ji losar, deya ane chu nima takpa jangya da, tawa da ane soya marana, chigi nima chuchonga do da, nima nga chu tena janyi ra, ane kunsen kosa yang nangshu janyi lo, tendegi kalo da losabala digala, ane chigi bid toba shu jachan bu chema sa jin la tendegi la nache tende nyawa kashi nache tende chitang sra ani hapar chi sabjin ra chitang gi tanda gi disungu ya de ani chi nache tende cheyagi chitang ba kansa dan zamni shanu kansa gi tendegi kansa chitang hapa de kan rejire la na hapar chi sabjin trewe ta ngzo gi pe hansa gi sabjin trewe dami bi so tongba ni ji ten ra shebar deba ta chunzu to ni shin de pendwa chunzula kodu dara ye 장스라 시여데 아니 저런들 가서나 의미 중루 첨보 남라서 로콘 메바 요마라 수술래가다 보고다 아니 드네기 텔레요라다 지 미스 간장한테 취체라는 깔레 카버르다 세상 현재 드네 메밤 아니 다 지네 가서는 아니 벽에 또 유비 있어 땡주라서 따도 나 벽에는 빼는 까다 땡주 만보여네 같이 지기 잔이샤니 그 미드줄라 뒤져여 봐이나야 빼셔든데 같이 빼중 서무도 지마사와이나야 건조 따에 뒤져라고 말와 근데 인디가라 아니 따도 미니바스 데나라 펜치 아니 기 심반나라 주라 기 현다 주루이스 주데 레데 코데 소르누기다 파주네 코데오다 아니 레하고 차 근데기 미 근데지레 준샤예스 근데 인데 샤지 게론 텐젠 자츠 티바게레 베송다 라 데마시야.
So then the last colophon is also we should also look at the last colophon, and then we will begin to realize this text was composed with an audience like ourselves in his mind. This has been written for the sake of helping in general those with burgeoning intellect in the East and the West who have a keen interest in Buddhism, and in particular those who, though they wish to understand the greatly profound and subtle meaning of the emptiness of selflessness, either do not have the time to study the great Madhyamika texts or cannot read and understand the treatises existing in the Tibetan language. Thus, it has been composed primarily with the intent of easy comprehension and for the sake of simple translation into other languages. May this, which has been written by the Buddhist monk Tenzin Gyatso, bring virtuous goodness. So, we should really make ourselves familiar with this text because His Holiness the Dalai Lama stresses that he wrote this text with a particular audience in his mind, because it is a fact of this day and age that many people are not able to dedicate all of their lives to study, practice, reflection, and so forth. So, His Holiness the Dalai Lama found it important to compose this text for people to have an accessible sort of teaching on these profound treatises and sutras.
다든에 이거라 땅안서 가정안서 천소를 좋아지 티라 패치기래 마셔 라사주로 가시기로 구양보 차치리 슬라이도 가시기 고도배 치디 가시기 nga 수인 뭐 하고야 치디 가시기 땅에마 지기 권유 토녀 유지 수수 야제다야 치들레바이스 라 아니 데데로 아니 가시 아니 가샤 동바니 콜라 신데스 시라 고도야 제도야시 치파치파르샤 안 수수 가시야 냥뇽사야 당라 아니 히제 칸데스제고예메다 아니 생기 초콜라 시에긴데 봐 예송다 더서만 로사사 마음시라 다음이 주바디 가르스나 nga jaga tadu jongwais kono jaga tadu jongwais ane nga dalas mate pes nge se wujiti mu shiro tayo ba dang so namba dang so shiro be shibar ta namba da shiba gi chiwa shindu yoro la shira shina nelu de shiro tembo ta kande maya che de chundu nge ta na ta zum 가정 시디지디는 만들어야 민두라 지 소소 로제 야제 다야다 소소 ngö수야도 안토니 콜라다 히제 콜다 아니 semba 그 양보 차야든 참아가도 로사사 디나로라 페질렌 참아 테사샤 가서는 얘기 담보처럼서 티어리 티어들 앞에 아니 게 자기 라라 디나로라 가서 니마 먼저 저랑서 렌드 테이브 서르시더라.
So now as we come to the end of this discussion, then I want to now reflect back on the expectations that you shared. Now, I have tried my best to accommodate all the expectations, and from my side, I think that we were able to address almost all of it because I noted them down. So, when I look at them, there were expectations, there were people who hoped to learn how to be more open-minded, who hoped to get some answers to the eternal question, who am I? And then there were people who hoped to understand a little bit more about Buddhist philosophy. And then someone also shared about how they hope to learn more precisely about the object of negation, and how some people also talked about they look at it as a new experience. People also shared that they wanted to know about how to cultivate love, care, and compassion in their own lives, how to make sense of the emotions, and so forth. So when I look at all of these, from my side, I think I've tried my best to address and accommodate all of these expectations.
사다 다 멈부지들 라 아니 근데 인디가라다 디 나로다 소소에 짜종체에 개체 뭐 직체 아니 대마 모양 세서 로야체 아니 셰버디가라 산노야 보다야 라 양디야 산노 다야 개체 뭐 당한 쉬래더라 망보지 지기 골로도 틀랑이 고소 싸면 지금 많이게 고와든 셀라샤니 니마니마 간도파 강에 드디가라 돈에 치토야지 라 근데지고다 나도 마로 자니나 마서 마잔 장장장 가져고도 참마장 마오네레 자마트나 디마사 티나생아 저거 단단한 저거 마저고데 말때 지니모도 손라 카리자야 장고다 카티 간데스 짜고 카티자야 장장장 짜살레디 자마트나 나저 뒤서 털어 차사 무디 인지미지기 아니 참에게 사슈 가와 로이네 디에 상야 바따로 치스라.
So now, to sum up, I would like to say that in these many days that we had together in our discussions, we were able to explore emptiness, the different parts, the different grounds of the bodhisattvas, and so forth. Now, if all of this just remains a sort of intellectual reflection, then it's not helpful at all. Now, with all these insights, understanding that we have gained, it is important that when we go back to our own lives, it is important to revise it again. By revise, I mean that we need to reflect on them, to contemplate on them, what we have heard, what we have learned, what we have studied here, and on the basis of cultivating a practice of contemplation and reflection, it should be the case that there is some change in our attitudes and our behaviors. Because unless and until there is no change in our attitudes and behaviors, then all these reflection just remain an intellectual exercise. It doesn't really help us. So as we cited the example before, that even if you get all the training as a soldier or a soldier, if when war actually comes, if you are not able to face it, then all these trainings are ineffective. So similarly, all these kind of discussions, all these kinds of reflections will be pointless that when challenging situations present themselves in our lives, as they will do, then if we are not able to use these reflections to react more wisely, react more mindfully to our to these, then all of these discussions that we just had, all this time we spend on study and reflection would become pointless.
아니 인다 단나 ngaranzu chi ngaranzu tani ma khashi dibil nganzu chunzo yashi nganzu mashi ende chin nganzu be kalorta shodo na phenzu chi chi chemu go ba ma khare yana suzu khare sheshin shi chranzu ge ngole tobada khare nganzu chi nge ende chera tigi nalo ya domji jamde nganzu kangi tembu ta zamni nganzu dina chewal ne bi shugule ya ngaranzu tambu lu khor tudang le da nyumo gi tuwa dende insan zala kangi khare ne yorra khashile nawi dunghe khashile sem kangi khashi nami macha phama da pugo macha choga da cheme macha pugo da phama macha ta mambuch do dere chinju yungor tuzu samma tanda pato khare chungena ta chaware digala sanna tan tuzu thola madane ta anzo nima gi chula sanna ta ro ani to de nganzo go sem tuni de khare yimba de nganzo nyumo tu san yimba hakwa te ani chi mege chibo tsurun tsushin sumayina peshin dinzo kangi de legimda ro chi chedang tang tapena lu number so nga ge number shi peshin nganzo de be shuta ro ra tunzu samasana yapo chitana maom pa yang kangi deri thigi mare thing dra am ngela kangi ro chungye diga thenso tan chyo ma de sama themba je darini zu de ngazo miss awash so samegi dinde gillo ji niba ji kini ani sajo kawa do ena so lega khande chewene kashi gege isire kashi lekun lega chenire kashi ji zora chembone lega cheni injire kashi pugo tani ra khande ji ba ine lasan na da thambu tansha so kayu ba galman gen kante pata hota bada chede peke chembra ra.
So now, in this few days together, we really we really lift up to the label of spiritual friends or spiritual companions, because in our discussions there were no hesitations, there were no sense of unease. All of us were really open with the doubts, with the hesitations, with the questions that we had, and as a teacher I have tried to address them to the best of my capacity. So now, in our discussions, we talked about a lot of problems that we face and continue to face in our lives. It is important to reflect on the fact that this very physical body is conditioned by karma and afflictions. So as such, small problems, small sufferings we will continue to experience throughout our lives. So as such, as we talked about many of the problems, sufferings that we have experienced in our lives, such as mental anguish, physical problems, as well as problems in our relationships with others. It is important to reflect on this, that this very physical body is underlain, conditioned by karma and afflictions. So as such, we are bound to experience these kind of problems again and again. But with that being said, it is important to now reflect back on our discussions about how all of our problems really do come from a disturbed mind. And what exactly makes our minds disturbed is that it's the afflictions that arise within our minds. So understanding this, we have to now, rather than focusing on these problems that we have, we have to now live each day as it comes. Each day as it comes more meaningfully. And by this I mean, as we talked about, that if we are able to abide by an ethical code of conduct of not engaging in the 10 non-virtuous actions each day, then many of the problems that we create for ourselves come to an end actually. And we kind of restrain ourselves from engaging. If we restrain ourselves from engaging in these 10 non-virtuous actions, then we really restrain the mind from developing further afflictions. So this is important to reflect on. So on the basis of this time that we had together for study, reflection, contemplation, now as we go back to our own lives, it is important that we begin to live our lives not in the same way now, in a new way. As you go about it, in your lives, many of you might go back to your offices, to the company that you work in. Many of you will maybe work as teachers. Whatever kind of professional lives that you have, it is important that we live our lives with integrity, we live our lives with honesty, we live our lives with mindfulness and awareness.
근데 인디가라 단단한서 다시 제일 치치치여라. 뒤뒤당한 지단 남주인의 좋아지는 시오라. 다페지 좋아지는 저이지래. 제무제 저 저제도 예서만 게 단셔. 다이네야 단다 질라딜랑한서 가르쳐올라나. 자정도 제 찌기 마시베 찌기 신유주라. 그런 딜린 당한도 니마 종이로 쳐다 다리 주숨니 다리 니스타숨니 산이다리 숨 받아 로라. 다 인디가라 다 단다바도 로샤주디 나로라 아니 소소 케벤 가르라서 가르시에서 세바 가르시에서 아니 생긴 조알라 가르가르 도스라 수 가르시주에나 신디더라 데리고다 마차나 아니 산이 쇼게더라 남나가서 들으시오이나 가르라나 pen kola pen to chung yu ju ra an shimba de gi shi wa na shimba de la tenso te ya de de ra shi sang ja jong ro na de ga me shimba ine yi zhe dang a de chen chu zu ka zi shi du da ra da de ga zu me chen mo jang jang de de chen ma wa che su su yu la ka ri shen su ka ri pen su lo la ka ri jo wa de su ka ri shi ju ne me chang ma re re shi ra de ni ma sa na ke ma re ani ga zu san shi ge ra de chen na ani yang chi gi ma shin chi gi tenso ro te ne ya de ga zu ja jong ro da yi zi me zi da ma wa de ni
So now, since the next session is an hour dedicated to question and answer session, but I hope by now all of the questions have been answered. But I'm just joking. I'm sure there are a lot of questions, but I maybe find it much more useful if we use the last session as a session for revision. Now herein, when I say a session for revision, I want to hear from you, honestly, what new insights were you able to achieve through the 12 days that we had for study, reflection, and discussion. And then more particularly, I also want to hear from you, what would you practically take away from this in your lives? And I think if each of us is able to share a little bit of our own insights, what we will take away from here in our own lives, then this will really be helpful for the group as a whole.
Today, that 저런 자통도 상당하다 가즈편에 앉아 드레스당 라서 남서시일라네 데모 쓰기문다. 라 저런들 저좀 지가르라는 남서 오다. 마이게.
So and Geshema was saying that since all of us are adults and we are supposed to have now attended a course, then normally it is the case that at the end of a course there is sort of an examination. Now this is your examination. And now as you sip your tea in the break, try to reflect on these two questions. Because if you are immediately asked these questions, I'm sure you will begin to turn the pages in your notes. So take the time as you sip your tea to reflect on these two questions, and we look forward to hearing your insights.
That's all.
Please do enjoy your tea then.